Hey, and Merry Christmas for last week and Happy New Year for this week. So, first up, you may have noticed that I kind of just disappeared from the internet. I did. I had a complete break. It wasn't the plan actually. I was going to still like bib in and out, and I just decided, you know what, fuck it. I really can't be bothered. No, and I had family incoming, and I was just like, oh, I just can't be bothered. And we are on episode 39. For those of you who were here with me with the first round of the show, that went on for almost 2 years, like it just and all the other stuff. I was just like, you know what, I just need a holiday. So I still kind of tuned in via social media, kind of like, you know, bibbing my comments here and there, but nothing kind of excessive. But what a week to come back to. So I do hope you had a wonderful Christmas. So this week we are going to be delving into a British citizen or Egyptian terrorist. So, you know, if you've got no inclination about what I might be talking about, then where have you been? Maybe you took an entire week off. Africa coming in hot. So this is what I've just been kind of really diving into, because it seems to be being glossed over. The whole Egyptian whatever his name is, I'll get his proper name in a minute. It's just taken over the media, which seems to have kind of downplayed the Epstein stuff, which we'll kind of touch on Epstein, but also the Africa stuff. So I think it's important we kind of talk about Africa. You have to excuse me. I have a bit of a cold. I probably don't have a bit of a cold. It's probably because I've been having a few alcoholic beverages and therefore dealing with histamines attacks. So it seems to be that Grok is having a teeny tiny little hissy fit on this last question, which is very frustrating. And then we will finish on 5 minutes of peace. So we may have to do Africa coming in hot first, or maybe I'll just scroll up and see what happens. Okay, so now let's do British citizen or Egyptian terrorist. So we're not going to be kind of diving into the fact that there were tweets and successive governments have been lobbying for him and all of that stuff. We're going to kind of go, if you've been on social. Okay, so if you haven't been on social media, there is a guy, right? So there's a guy called Alaa Abd El Fattah, who is an Egyptian. Born in Egypt, his mother's Egyptian, his grandparents are Egyptian, his ex-wife's Egyptian, his son's Egyptian. So there actually isn't any British in there at all whatsoever. And I don't quite think people understand this, especially not the way that the media is portraying it. Like, he is not a British citizen. His mum's not a British citizen as we would think of a British citizen, right? So basically, so his mum, Layla Suif, was born in London, May the 1st, 1956. And under the British Nationality Act 1948, it granted automatic citizenship to anybody born on UK soil, regardless of potential nationality or residency duration. So both grandparents, mother and father, were over in the UK, doing a bit of education, higher education. The dad, so granddad, is an Egyptian psychologist, and grandmother is a professor of English literature. So they were over here in the 50s, enhancing their education. And during their time here, they got pregnant and gave birth. So they were kind of here on student visas. They weren't working. They were here in university. They were students, but because the mum was born. Let me use names. So grandma and granddad were over here being students. Mum was born here, therefore she was automatically given Britain's citizenship. Now you have to remember what was going on in the 50s. We'd not long come out of World War II. We needed to beef up the numbers. So at that time, Egypt was no longer British territory. No, it still was. So it was just under. No, it no longer was. So 1952, it was independent. So it was not even like it was a British colony. So Egypt was completely independent 4 years prior to this. So in reality, the mum shouldn't actually have British citizenship. And I wasn't aware this was a thing, right? So the sheer number of people with dual nationalities or who have a capacity to pass on British citizenship with actually not really being in Britain, I think is really, really fucking dodgy. But it was going on. It has been reversed now, but I think it was reversed in the 1980s from what I can remember. But for a very long time, if you were literally used to come into you could land on UK soil, give birth, and that's it. You've got British citizenship, which is potentially how we've got lots of third generation immigrants who just automatic, when you kind of think of the most likely individuals who are going to be committing very, very horrific atrocities, they will be this same generation of grandparents, funnily enough, right? So it will be those after World War II. So we're on kind of third generation now. And fourth, he's got a child. But it's the third generation who are here knocking around and very active and very destructive. So I thought it was interesting that Grandad was a psychologist. More importantly, he is being cited and credited as the founder of modern psychology in the Arab world, right? So the Allah Abd El Fattah isn't some random person. He's not just a random person. His granddad is known as cited as the modern the person who kind of brought Freudian work, which is really interesting because this is after the World War. This is when everybody kind of already knew Freud was a paedophile. His work was starting to be debunked in the Western world. People were kind of stepping away from all the shit that he was doing. I say that people still kind of like lean on it now, but in academic circles, there was lots of questioning over Freud stuff because we'd come out of World War II. So what happened in World War II? The Nazis did all the like crazy Nazi shit. And all science came on leaps and bounds because of the shit that they were doing and the stuff that governments were doing to their own people and pretending they weren't. So it was really fucking dodgy scientific era even. But he translated Sigmund Freud's word into Arabic and integrated Western psychological theories with Arab cultural context. She was bridged Eastern and Western literary traditions, promoting cross-cultural understanding. The really important thing is while definitely sounds dodgy that Grandad was a psychologist and all in on Freud, but they were very West, like pro-West. So while Egypt had and yes, there was the whole, canal, Suez Canal shizzle kind of that kind of happened, and there was a bit of tension. Actually, if you think about the political landscape, the British Empire was only just kind of coming out of it, so it's a very westernized state at the time, right? So when you see all the photos photos and videos of people in Egypt and Iran and Tehran and all of those places, and they're wearing like Western, Western cultured clothing, women in university, advancements in civilization. Well, that's because of this fucking horrible British colony and all the British Empire and the Italian Empire and the French Empire, all the people that everybody says all these like empires were so bad, and yet you see all of the advancements in the Middle East was because of the shit we did in our own land, and we went over and went, oh, maybe we can like put toilets in the homes, we can, running water, like all of these things, railways, in India, like the railways, it's like the Victorian railway. It's the same as in the UK. It's like this is why it's falling apart, right? We give India money and they like fucking use it to fix the railways. In the UK, it just goes in the pockets of unscrupulous arseholes. But the grandparents were pro-West. Very excited. If you think about what kind of happened with regards to spirituality at the same time, right? So at the same time, we had people from the East coming to the UK and America and promoting meditation and yoga. And so after World War II, there was this huge opportunity for the East and the West all to actually commingle and become friends and learn about each other. And then obviously the spy agencies got involved because they wanted the resources. And you had like the rise of the American empire who wanted to be in control, right? Who completely derailed the UK. I mean, bankrupted the UK. So you have the British Empire disappearing, still got lots of fingers in pies, but so then you have the destabilization via the US, the Cold War, and then Africa and the Middle East becomes like these two continents which are emerging and have real opportunity that then just get destroyed. And then obviously they're kind of having to destroy us now because we keep saying no to the wanton corruption and genocide and all that shit. But so basically what Grok's having a real hissy fit over, because I wanted to find out like how did he become a British citizen? Because what you see in the mainstream media is like, he's returned home. He's never been to the UK ever. Like he hasn't returned. The mum comes quite a lot to hunger strike and petition people, but she actually lives in Egypt. She's a professor at Cairo University. He was born there. I mean, his sister's kind of knocking around. One of his sisters has been like, it's pro-Hamas, just celebrating October the 7th. So him saying his views are all outdated, they're old, they're not anything that, he believes right now, which I'm going to say is bullshit, because his sister still believes the same thing, right? There we go. So what I was asking, and it's just taken like 6 attempts for Grok to do this, it kept having a little hissy fit. Because we want to know like what happened for third generation, right? So why is he calling for white genocide? Why is he calling Britons monkeys and dogs? Why? Which I think is hilarious considering we invented all of this stuff, all this technology, like all and like monkeys and dogs you'd think, I mean, I would assume means subhuman, right? Less than human, more animalistic. We eat with knives and forks. We eat with knives and forks. We sit on a toilet inside the house. We have running water. We don't live in shacks. We don't shit in holes. I mean, sometimes they do in France, but France. But we don't eat with one hand and wipe our ass with the other hand. So I'm just going to kind of throw it out there that if anybody is less civilized, it's a very strange kind of connotation. And if you don't have cutlery, then you've got to eat with your hands, right? And if you don't have toilet rolls, you've got to find something to wipe with. I get it. But it's the fact that none of this was invented. At no point did anybody outside the West go, we don't have access to running water. This is probably not that hygienic. Maybe we can like create an implement. I don't know. I think it's bonkers. So kill Zionists, we need more suicide bombing, so very horrific rhetoric, which both governments, conservatives were the one who gave him British citizenship. So if you don't know what happened, because the mum got British citizenship, like I mentioned, because she was literally just like grandma popped her out over here. There was a rule change in 2019 where citizenship can pass from, so pre-2019, British citizenship could pass from father to child, but it couldn't pass from mother to child. However, when the rule changed with regards to equality, then the mum was able to say, oh, well, I'm a British citizen, so now my son is. So that's literally how he became a British citizen. Like, mum was popped out during the 50s. And then while he was in prison, mum went, oh, here you go. Like, it is the most insane thing in the world. Something else, just so you know, he is going to be in Egypt all the time. They literally said he's going to be in Egypt all the time. So there's actually no need for him to be a British citizen. Right? He can come over and see his child. Supposedly his child is autistic, and this is why they don't want to relocate him into Egypt. But his ex-wife is Egyptian, so she moved over here even though he was in prison in Egypt. Do you see how this is like really fucking odd? Like, it's not like at the time when they were married with, pregnant, like, he was in prison in Egypt and mum ran away to the United Kingdom. And, I don't know when, like, she came to the United Kingdom, but while he was in prison in Egypt, mum came to England. Nobody else think this is really fucking weird? So it obviously was not a loving relationship, because if you love someone, you would then want to take your child to go see them. You would want to at least be in a country where you can see them. So even when he wasn't in prison, he was on a flight ban. So he was not allowed out of Egypt, even when he wasn't in prison. So because we're doing grandparents, his mum, so his ex-wife took the child to a completely different country where he wasn't allowed to go. I don't understand why nobody's bringing this up. This is odd. But they're Muslim, right? So what happens is wives aren't allowed to leave at all. So I hope the mum's protected. The ex-wife is being looked after and protected. Well, so now that dad's a British citizen, just because, mum went, here you go. So that means his son will now be a British citizen. So it's really dodgy. Really dodgy. Okay, but what I was trying to ask Grok was what might have happened over time to turn the pro-Western grandparents into anti-Western and white, non-violent themselves, but inciting, celebrating violence of others' grandchildren, right? So this is what you will hear all across the mainstream media. He's non-violent. He was put in prison for some tweets. I mean, kind of like Lucy Connolly, but or 12,000 other people who've been put in prison for a social media tweet. So in the UK, we have incitement as a law, right? So if you incite something, you end up being convicted of the crime, So if I'm inciting people to go out and, rape and pillage, right? Like the good old days with the Romans and the Victorians, Romans and the Vikings, like raping and pillaging. And I would say some countries are definitely doing that right now. It's not even in the good old days. But say if I'm like encouraging people to riot, or and I'm encouraging people to damage property as the Blade Runners, right? So this is why I said be very careful about the things that you're promoting. Not because I'm being a Debbie Downer, but because like incitement carries the same weight and the same like sentence as the actual crime. Same as conspiracy. Like I love conspiracy as a law, and I love incitement, right? If it's used appropriately. So Egypt has a very similar law. So while he wasn't violent himself, potentially, the first time he was arrested, it was because it was during Arab Spring, and we know the Arab Spring was an MI6, MI5 kind of overthrow, color revolution. So it had nothing to do with the actual genuine people. It was all kind of created on purpose. So the regime change, right? This is what happens. So it was regime change about resources, and so Arab Spring happened. It was involved in that quite energetically. And he had they thought, or one of the initial charges was assault of a police officer, which is, in the UK, if you assault a police officer, you can go to prison. So he was involved in that. And we have to remember that what happened after the Arab Spring in Egypt was the Muslim Brotherhood got in power. So this is where there's the links between him and the Muslim Brotherhood, which he's vehemently denied. But he was involved in, like, bringing down the government that was, helping the Muslim Brotherhood get into power. So of course you're going to see, well, that's a bit of a dodgy connection. And just for anybody out there, like my old neighbor, as in like, I mean, she's older than me, but that's not what I meant. Like my neighbor who used to be there, she used to live in Egypt, and she was in Egypt when the Muslim Brotherhood took over. And so before that point, it was relatively kind of normal. But during that whole Arab Spring thing, I don't know whether you've seen the Lara Logan testimonial. Like I heard that firsthand from what happened to her, and she was brutalized and gang raped, but physically brutalized so badly she's struggled to walk ever since. Like they had to completely reconstruct her knee. Right? It was horrific, and she has PTSD from it. Like she couldn't leave her home. So her, and she ended up leaving her husband. Like she moved back to the UK by herself. She left her entire life behind because of what happened. Because she was white and an infidel, right? So I don't know why anybody thinks it's going to be different with the shit that's going on over here. But anyway, so she was there when it all kind of like it was overnight. It just kind of like things went insane. So he was involved in that. He also has been, they say like he did some bad tweets, but actually his bad tweets were, more suicide bombings, white genocide. These aren't, do you know what, Keir Starmer, you're a fucking wanker and you need to resign, right? That's acceptable. That is absolutely acceptable. Me saying, like, he needs to be hung, like, that's not right, ever. I mean, and I've said over and over again, like, I don't believe in murder, whether it's state sanctioned or not. I don't believe in murder. So before that gets taken out of context, right? But so that's a very different conversation. Me promoting genocide, me saying all XYZ needs to be wiped off the planet. And remember, his grandparents like his mum was born here, his grandparents got their advanced education here, and at some point along the way, he's now deciding the West needs to be completely wiped off the face of the earth, right? Um, so I've been this is what I was trying to ask, right, okay, so what happened? How did we go from that in 75 years? So it's not even a very long span of time, and it probably wouldn't be 75 years. It's really 60 years because he was tweeting 2010, 2011. So the transformation in Allah Abd El Fattah's family from the grandparents' engagement with Western academia in the 50s to grandchildren, anti-Western rhetoric and endorsement of violence. So again, and it's not just Allah, his sisters are the same. Celebrating attacks on Zionist Israelis and US soldiers. Sister Monica's October 7th 23 post framing Hamas tactics as innovative resistance. Hey Pen, I had to fight with Grok over this with regards to his sister, because I'd seen a post. So if you're on X, if you scroll back through the last 48 hours, you'll see all the random posts of him and his sisters that I kind of like saw, found, hunted. And I'd kind of said to Grok, okay, well, it's not just him though. He's saying it's historical, but his sister's literally celebrating October 7th. And Grok's like, no, she isn't. And I was like, okay, right, I will go and find these tweets again. And then he conceded, right? So this is how heavy the mainstream narrative is, with pasting it as an old, outdated ideology, which actually makes it worse. It makes it worse because the older this ideology, the more aligned he technically should be with his grandparents who adored the West. So he says it's not a straight line radicalization, but a reflection of broader geopolitical traumas, personal experience, and ideological evolution over 75 years. The grandparents weren't explicitly pro-Western. They were secular, benefiting from Western education. Their descendants, while non-violent activists, focusing on protest, blogging, and hunger strikes, adopted radical leftist, anti-imperialist stance that celebrates violence as resistance. Geopolitical traumas and perceived betrayals. So the grandparents were here under early independence. So education was seen as national empowerment without conflict. The Suez Canal made things a little bit like hinky, and this started to kind of fuel anti-imperialist sentiment across the Egyptian society, saying that we were aggressive colonizers, potentially planted seeds of skepticism. Then the 1967 Six-Day War, where US support for Israel humiliated Arab nations. 1973 Yom Kippur War, where conflict shifted intellectual families towards pan-Arab nationalism, saying that we, the UK and US, were enablers of Israeli occupation. So remember, all of this destabilization is being done with UK and US intelligence services, and China and Russia. So you have to remember what was actually going on in the Middle East and Africa, which is really sad for all of these nations. It's the same shit that's going on in the UK. Is that the US and the UK and Canada, Australia, Commonwealth are vying for control and still want their empires, right? And you have to see, like, the Middle East and Africa were still technically up for grabs. While they weren't up for grabs, overtly anymore, they didn't want to lose the foothold, and particularly didn't want to lose the foothold to China and Russia. So when you see, China and Russia will have been doing like dodgy shit in the background, trying to destabilize, try to, get rid of the UK and Europe. so that they can come in and make deals, right? So this is what's going on. And then because the UK and America see like Russia and China making the deals, they then go in the other side and they're trying to, destabilize and make deals. And then on the surface, you're like, why do they hate us all of a sudden? Why is this crazy shit going on? Well, the crazy shit's going on is because the intelligence services are just fucking shit up in the background, paying bad actors to cause issues so that they can capitalize, right? So it's very much the same. If you think about, UK Parliament, they make laws that they don't remove them, regardless how shitty they are, right? So once you own something, you don't want to let it go, ever. So we have all this kind of going on in the background. So instability being done by Russia and China versus US and UK. So same sort of shit we're seeing right now. So family legacy and personal experience. The grandparents embodied cross-cultural bridge building, translating Western ideas into Arabic context without apparent anti-Western bias. Their daughter, so Lila, which is Af's mother, grew up in Nasser's socialist Egypt, becoming a mathematics professor and activist against corruption. So this intensified in the grandchildren's generation through direct repression. So Allah, born in 1981, is witnessed Mubarak's pro-Western authoritarianism, 1981 to 2011. So where USAID propped up a regime that jailed dissidents. So we see, during the tail end of the grandparents, we see America and UK versus Russia, Russia and China, UK, USA win, prop up the Mubarak government. And so, but remember, there's multiple factions, because then they come and destabilize through the back door because it's better for them, right? So where USAID propped up regime that jailed dissidents, the Arab Spring 2011 offered hope, but 2013 military coup, backed implicitly by the West, continued aid, crushed it, leading to Allah's decade-long imprisonment on trumped up. It says here trumped up charges. They're not trumped up charges. That's what Wikipedia is saying. The charges were based on the Egyptian incitement laws, right? His tweets, his blogs, his communication, inciting violence, right? But it's very strange. They never actually used the incitement laws, but they weren't kind of benign comments. They were calling for suicide bombings. They were calling for like death and destruction. So they're not. I don't agree with anyone having those views at all. I 100% believe that our government is corrupt and they all need to be removed from power. I don't believe they all need to be murdered. Don't believe they need to be set on fire. Don't believe they need to be genocided. I don't believe the Islamists need to be genocided. I don't even believe the crazy climate activists need to be genocided. I feel very sorry for them. I'm not convinced they will ever truly understand the grip of the brainwashing that they've undergone. That kind of communication, that's not incitement. He was inciting violence, like really. The tweets that have been shown on mainstream media are the same sort of shit that you were saying about Egypt and West and all of that stuff, right? And he was involved in the Arab Spring, which enabled the Muslim Brotherhood to take over. So this radicalized their views, framing the West as hypocritical, championing democracy abroad while funding autocrats at home. Allah's anti-Western tweets emerged during Gaza conflicts, where Western media bias and arms sales to Israel were seen as complicit in violence, justifying resistance rhetoric. But let's not forget, in 2005, Gaza was given, so Palestine were given the keys to their own fucking kingdom. but they just chose to take all of the aid and dig tunnels, turn their citizens into suicide bombers and child soldiers, and keep fucking attacking Israel, right? So, do I agree that all Palestinians should be genocided? No. But I do think we need to kind of, and obviously Israel are going to be very anti, like both sides have literally been trying to kill each other for 70 years, right? So this is perpetual dehumanizing on both sides. Neither side are right. Like at some point somebody has to say, but you're innocent, you haven't done anything, right? Just because your dad was horrific doesn't mean you're horrific, right? There's somebody needs to be the big person. However, when it comes to radicalization and brainwashing, you have to be careful, right? So it's like we need some kind of amnesty going on in there. Anyway, so the family aligns with leftist anti-imperialism, influence thinkers like Edward Said, who happened to be a family acquaintance via Lila's sister, right? So basically, it was the mum. So Alad's mum is the one who became quite leftist. Well, she grew up in so where we are now, right? So you've got psychopathic socialists in charge. He was born into fucking communist dictatorship. This is why it's so hilarious, isn't it? So he was born into a communist dictatorship being paid by the West, right? So you can understand why the guy's pissed off. However, I wasn't the one who did that. Like, I didn't do that. Anyway, so anti-apartheid, anti-Iraq war, blended with local grievances, turning admiration for Western knowledge into resentment of Western policies. So social media made things normalize endorsing violence as symbolic defiance. I would not agree with that. They celebrate martyrs, jihadis, tactics against perceived oppressors, very obvious patterns of Islamist radicalization, right? Which is hilarious, again, because if you actually look at what's going on in places where, ISIS and stuff like that were in control, or the Muslim Brotherhood were in control, it didn't make it good for the citizens, right? And I'm not saying it was good under all the shit that was going on before, but yeah, they had a lot more freedom. So Egypt's relationship, so 1952 to 2025. Egypt's relationship with the West wasn't initially happy. It was complex, born from colonial resentment, but independence in 1952 sparked a brief honeymoon of pragmatic engagement before descending into widespread anti-Westernism. Over 75 years, this evolution stemmed from repeated perceived betrayals, economic dependencies, and identity politics. So here's the timeline-based analysis. So 1952 to 1956, independence, initial pragmatism. So the 1952 revolution ousted the British-backed monarchy, ushering in Nasser's nationalist regime. So nationalist, so like Hitler-based regime. Egypt sought Western aid for modernization. So we don't want you in our country, but you will give us money to sort our country, right? And then they get annoyed when we go, okay, we'll give you some cash, but XYZ, right? So this is the same with, like, you have no right to be in our country. We're going to sort shit out ourselves. Holy shit, we've got no fucking money. You need to give us money. And when you put conditions on that money, you're a cunt, right? That's completely hypocritical, but that's what they all do. So viewing the West, so going with West versus Russia, because at the time Russia was communist. So Russia wasn't the same as it is today. So they chose, despite being anti-Western, against democracy and all of that shit, they chose to go with the democratic countries to borrow money rather than lean into communism. Public sentiment was anti-imperialist, but not outright hostile. Many elites, like the Sufis, studied in the West. Relations were happy in the sense of mutual interest. And the US aimed to secure oil access and to contain communism, right? So now they're all in on fucking communism, right? So 1956, 1970, Suez Crisis, anti-imperialist turn. So 1956 invasion by Britain, France, and Israel, opposed by the US, humiliated Egypt, but boosted Nasser's pan-Arabism, framing the West as aggressors. US withdrawal of Aswan funding led to Soviet alliances. 1967 defeat by Israel with Western arms deepened hatred, associating the West with Zionism and Arab humiliation. So they lost. So the Suez Canal, they blockaded it, and then the UK, France, and Israel went no, and then they lost, and then we're the bad guys, right? Anyway. So 1970 to 2011, Sadat and Mubarak's pro-Western pivot amid public resentment. So Sadat realigned with the West, expelling Soviets in 1972 and signing the Camp David Accords in 1978 for peace with Israel, securing US aid, right? So peace with Israel gives you money. This stabilized the regime, but alienated the public. Sadat was assassinated in 1981 by Islamists. Mubarak maintained alliances, the Gulf War support, war on terror, but corruption, inequality, and US backing of Israel fueled grassroots anti-Westernism. So Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood gained traction by criticizing Western puppets. But bearing in mind, the Muslim Brotherhood had already been kind of knocking around 80 odd years by then. So they just were able to able to infiltrate. 2011, 2025, Arab Spring, repression and entrenched hatred. So the uprising ousted Mubarak with initial Western support for democracy. However, the Muslim Brotherhood's brief rule 2012, 2013, and Sisi's 2013 coup with tacit Western approval via continued aid exposed hypocrisy. US-UK prioritise stability over rights. And then economic woes. So 2022, 2025, got bad inflation, got IMF loans with austerity, Gaza conflicts, amplified sentiment. By 2025, public polls show 70 to 80% viewing the US unfavourably, driven by media portraying Western powers as meddlers, funding repression while ignoring Palestinian suffering, of course. Overall, Egypt's hate stems from a cycle of dependency and disillusionment. Initial independence, optimism gave way to betrayals, economic exploitation, support for unpopular regimes. This mirrors post-colonial patterns in the Middle East, where Western interventions breed resentment, turning admiration into radical anti-imperialism, right? But it's the same pattern, right? You're not welcome in our country, but fuck, we need some money from you. Or this is the agreement. Now you're no longer here. We're going to kind of go back on the agreement, right? So the same as what happened in Ukraine with Russia, right? So if you look at what happened, they had a democratic election. We have the Crimea and Donbass all voting that they want to be part of Russia, and the UN ignores it. They say, no, it didn't happen. Russia's annexed Crimea, right? So we see that same sort of shit going on now. It was all designed to make money. It's all about making money, making money, making money. And these poor saps in the middle who think they're being heroic. Oh, 2 seconds. Where am I? Let me just bookmark this on X and then go back to where we are. It's really interesting how my shows don't show up as actual shows. They just show as like a line. Like anyway. So we also have so he was a leading figure, right? So he was a leading figure in the 2011 revolution. He wasn't on the sidelines. He was in the thick of it and very public. He was so the human rights group that say it was all politically motivated happen to be the same human rights groups that completely ignored people like Lucy Connolly, completely ignored, and yes, I know that was dodgy, but they still did, right? Completely ignored the fact that we were being forced to be in our homes, we were being forced to be medically treated. So it's those same human rights groups that were saying that it was all politically motivated. And ignoring the fact that what he was actually posting, the same as they're doing with Palestine, right? So all the Palestinians are completely innocent, and the same as what people are doing on the Israel side. All the Israelis are completely innocent. You get sick fucks, right? Sick fucks in Ukraine, sick fucks in Russia, sick fuck in our own military in the United Kingdom and in the USA. I mean, I've heard directly from people who've served some of the shit that goes on, right? It's not good. You get sick fucks and people. And some of it is we went through this before, we didn't you get the psychology of the person who's most likely to go into a position of power where they have power over others. Look at the UN Blue Helmets, raping and pillaging across everywhere they're supposed to be peaceful, right? Why? Because of the power. But then you become desensitized to it, right? So if you are a child living in a war zone and you are seeing dead people all the fucking time, and you are in that position where it's kill or be killed, you don't have empathy at that point, right? We went through this. You don't have empathy yet. You are in complete psychopathic, no empathy, survival mode, non-stop. Then you start getting like really fucking cross-wired with what you start to enjoy, right? What feels good, what gets you excited. And it's only when you then hit your late 25s, 30s, those parts of your brain start to kind of formulate, and not for everybody, but if you're taken out of that situation early enough, then you're haunted by all the shit that kind of happened, right? So you get flooded in flashbacks. In the same way, people who are abused, kind of, you hit your teenage years and early 20s, early 30s, and it depends on when you kind of how many people you're around who have empathy when the kind of healing starts to kick in. But at some point, you start to realize all the stuff you took part in, all the stuff that you witnessed, and it's complete. You have a complete emotional breakdown. So, as a safety mechanism, like you just keep going and keep going and keep going, ignore it and carry on. So again, he was his son's 14. There we go. He lives in Brighton. So he was a prominent and leading figure. So there's no way he's got no ties to the Muslim. He keeps saying, I've got no ties to the Muslim Brotherhoods. But they were who were being. Remember what was going on? We have like Obama in power. We have the Clintons in the State Department. We have USAID. We have Huma Abedin tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. We have Obama tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. So that was what was going on. And he's like prominent. And now he's like in the UK, right? I mean, I was trying to find out whether he was, like, linked to an intelligence agency, but I don't think he was. I think he was probably just, easy target for radicalization based on his mother, because his sisters have the very same, like, so his sisters have the very same views. I also tried to see if there was any kind of, like, intelligence asset swaps or any, artifact swaps or anything like that. So there was no kind of, tit for tat, quid pro quo going on. Just I just would say that he'd been in there for that long. They were like, "It's fine. We can get rid of him. We've got worse people who probably, we've got worse people who probably need the spaces." And if the UK is now gonna take responsibility for him, right? So that's what they all do. They outsource the Muslim Brotherhood to countries where that they're not illegal, right? So if think of it from Egypt's point of view. If you are trying your best, because they won't let Palestinians in, right? If you're trying your best to create a stable nation, and be prosperous, if you keep having people who are inciting terrorism in your country, you have them in the prisons. But then when you've got somewhere to put them, which is outside of your country, like, I don't blame them for going, "You fucking deal with them," right? That's literally what they've done. Egypt have gone, "Oh, we can't be asked with this shit anymore. Over you go. Go somewhere else, instead." Because I think if he wasn't given dual citizenship, they wouldn't have released him in September, because then they would have to deal with him. They'd have to monitor him. They have to deal with him, right? So in my personal experience, when we go with British citizen or Egyptian terrorist, I'm gonna go with Egyptian terrorist. I don't see him de-radicalized in any kind of way with the fact that his sister was still celebrating, and that he's been in prison multiple times and he just keeps going back, and that he was heavily involved in the Arab Spring, which led to the Muslim Brotherhood kind of like taking over for a little bit. Like, I don't, so you don't de-radicalize. And with regards to his upbringing, his mum being like a super crazy leftist. I think we're just gonna have to deal with that when it fucking happens, because our country is it's got a bunch of retards running it. Okay. So Africa coming in hot, and this is really strange that I do think the mainstream media. So yes, I think it was worth kind of talking about him, but in a different way to everybody else, as always. But I do think it's being done to overplay some of the stuff that was going on in Africa. Which I think is important. Like, I think Africa is particularly important in the United Kingdom, with the fact that we keep getting Africa. So Middle East and Africa, very important to pay attention to, because they keep fucking ending up over here. So just as an aside, I did want to kind of talk about the cancelled elections, democracy stuff, as I kind of came across a interview with somebody from the Heritage Party who it kind of sounds like a lot of stuff they did are behind why the mayoral elections were cancelled, which is good. And I said to you before I saw this, the mayoral elections, we don't want mayors. It's about devolution. It's bad. But it sounds like they've been doing lots of work. So I wanted to kind of go into that. But actually, when I get really frustrated when I watch stuff and people kind of don't talk about, so they've done lots of work and kind of done legal stuff, but didn't kind of mention any of the laws or anything. So I'm gonna have to go and do like some proper digging, and go and find out all the stuff that they launched, which is a bit bit frustrating. But the reason why I can't talk about that, which is really interesting, is that she's from Poland originally. She moved to the UK, but like Poland right now, like that's where everybody's going. So she escaped communism, helped dismantle communism to move to the UK, and now I've probably sat there thinking, for fuck's sake, like seriously. But she was saying we need to start paying attention to what's going on abroad. We need to pay attention to what's going on in the UK. I don't think that is good. Personally, I don't think that's good advice. While we can't necessarily impact, and we should be focusing locally and nationally 100% with our efforts, I think it's negligent to not pay attention to what's going on in the outside world, because our governments are meddling in the outside world. And if you've kind of been here a while, you'll know that's my main beef with the Yanks. Love you, Pen. But that's my main beef, is they've been very, very insular, and have no idea of what is going on in the outside world, and seem very shocked when things go wrong. So we have to remember that they are pushing for this globalist agenda, and anybody who bucks the trend, they will use all of these fucking dodgy means to destabilize and fuck shit up. So if we don't pay attention to what's going on, then we're just going to get bit in the ass, because they're thinking decades ahead, and they're planning decades ahead, and we are literally on the back foot. We need to be paying attention to see what's potentially coming around the corner. And obviously we know UN Agenda 2030 is coming around the corner. Like, this is literally what we're doing right now, and we can still block things. I genuinely believe we can. They're going to kind of like push World War III to force through 15-minute cities, because it won't be safe. There'll be safe zones, which will happen to be the 15-minute cities. You will need to have your ID to confirm you're not like, a dangerous person from abroad. You're not a spy. You're not an infiltrator. So all of these things, the same as they did under World War I, World War II, they're just kind of like everything in the UN agenda that we're pushing against. They're just going to like fucking force through with war-based laws. But obviously the next agenda, UN agenda, is Africa 2063, right? So if we're not paying attention to Africa and what China have been doing with the Belt and Road initiative, like you can't be so insular, because we do live in with the rest of the world. While I do believe we need to protect our borders, we do have a right to exist as British people, like all of those things. I'm not into globalism. I think every country has a right to exist as the country decides. And I don't think any country's got a right to dictate what happens in another country. If you live in a country where you are strung up by the ankles, because that's what happens in your country, then that's what happens in your country. Like, change it. That you need to be motivated to change it. It's not up to me to change it for you. And I think that's the beauty of social media and the internet, is people then see what's possible and then have an opportunity to change things. But it's not my job to change it for somebody. And if you don't like the fact that we sit on toilets, we don't fucking stand on them, we don't want to change it. Right? So like, it's not like you go to another country. You shouldn't go to another country and force changes. It's so people are so hypocritical. And I've never been for going to another country and deciding what they should and shouldn't be doing. I've been like against that forever, because I just think it's just rude. It's just rude. Oh no, my tortoise is still out and the lights have all gone off. He'll be fine. So I think that it's done to overshadow Africa. Okay, so with regards to, we'll start with oh no, here we go. We'll start with Nigeria. Let me just look. Okay, let me know when you can see this. So what we had was a bombing of strategic places in Nigeria. It happened on Christmas Eve, and they kind of said about it on Christmas Day. And we had the mainstream media and all the insane lefties, going off on one about the fact that Trump says it's about Christians, and they didn't, he didn't do it to any of the Christian strongholds. How dare he go and fucking bomb another country? And I've said that before, right? When he's actually been bombing other countries. However, like I'd seen already. So the first stuff I saw about it was actually from the Nigerian government that happened to be, on my Twitter feed, and other people in Nigeria who were actually celebrating that this had happened. And I was like, well, this is really fucking strange. Like, Trump's not an idiot. Like, if he's going to bomb somewhere, it's going to be important. And he doesn't want to start World War III, right? He's doing everything he can to stop it. So there's no way he's literally just gone Christmas Eve. Oh yeah, let's just drone strike. let's just play darts with where we're going to drone strike, which is pretty much the narrative that came out from the mainstream media, right? Which was insane. So then Nigeria had to come out on Boxing Day and be like, the fuck? This was a joint operation. Like, could you imagine being like the Nigerian government who were like, okay, well, we've done this thing. And they have targeted ISIS where they were, right? So you'd be like, okay, well, we've did this thing. It was really good. There were no civilian casualties. Well done us. Collateral damage. And then you're kind of thinking everybody's going to be celebrating you. Everyone's like, fucking Trump's insane dictator bombing Nigeria is an idiot. And you must be like going, wait a minute, what? Like, what? Wait, what? This isn't what happened. So they had to make a fucking statement. Right? They had to come out the day after and be like, this isn't, you guys are behaving, BBC, Reuters, MSNBC, whoever you are fucking dumb, because this is not what happened. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so this is Nigeria, literally came out and did an official statement which says the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria confirms that Nigerian authorities remain engaged in structured security cooperation with international partners, including the United States of America, in addressing the persistent threat of terrorism and violent extremism. This has led to precision hits on terrorist targets in Nigeria by airstrikes in the northwest. Right? So this isn't empty fields that are like useless. These are US and Nigerian based intelligence services have identified these areas as important strategic areas, right? These are important to be disrupted, right? And so, if we just lean on what's going on in Palestine, where they bomb a hospital, which is a hospital on top, but underneath they've got like fucking missiles, tunnels. It's like a stronghold. Similarly, what happened, we same sorts of things going on in Ukraine. Is what's going on underground. Can be important. So just because and okay, so let's take it outside of that and go back to what happened in the United Kingdom, right? I spent a stint of my childhood on RAF Lynham, which is decommissioned, by the way, now. But it was really important during World War II because it was all the airplanes they were all underground, like kind of like Thunderbird styly, right? So if you flew over, it didn't look like an airbase. If you think about what Germany did, Germany completely rearmed. And where were they rearming? Underground, right? So just because ISIS don't have a fucking... they haven't built a castle with an ISIS flag on, where they're like, this is the ISIS headquarters. Yeah, like... I mean, don't get me wrong. Like sometimes people sometimes mistakes are made, but there's no way the USA and Nigerian government and intelligence services, and when it's the US government, that's not just US intelligence, that will be Five Eyes intelligence, so that's UK, Australia, um, Canada, New Zealand, and and America, right? So this is like the and USA always has like Mossad-based information, right? So these are like huge intelligence agencies who've all identified these areas. And the BBC and the fucking lefties are just like, well, well, they just bombed empty fields. They don't know what they're doing. Trump's a megalomaniac. Like, at what point? At what point can these people just be put in some kind of put them in an internment camp? Please. Please. Nobody's murdering them, but they just need to be somewhere out of the way. Anyway, so in line with established international practice and bilateral understandings, this cooperation includes the exchange of intelligence, strategic coordination, and other forms of support consistent with international law, mutual respect for sovereignty, and shared commitments to regional and global security. So they literally had to say, we did this with America. We chose to work with a partner because we don't have the capabilities to do this by ourselves. We don't want ISIS here. Remember, Nigeria underwent like a regime change, and the attacks on Christians went up, the fucking kidnappings went up. Do you remember me saying, like, this is like, I don't know what happened in Nigeria, because like they went for a regime change and then all of a sudden like shit went worse. Well, of course they did, because they're trying to destabilize it. So anyway, the new Nigerian government were like, we don't want this shit anymore. Like, we don't want them. Maybe they didn't want this shit anyway, but we don't want this shit. We don't have the capabilities to do this. We need help. Kind of like Egypt did. And then they went, we want your money, but we don't want to do what you tell us, right? Which is fair enough. Everybody should be working towards getting rid of terrorism. And the benefit in itself is not having the terrorists. I don't think there should be some quid pro quo. It's literally not having the terrorist stronghold is going to save lives outside of Nigeria. We can just be mates. We can be mates. Do you know what? Like, if you and I were in a playground back at school, if you're in a playground and I see you getting the shit kicked out of you, I'm going to go and probably dive in and help you, right? I mean, unless you're a cunt. No, I might just walk past, which is fair enough. If you've been an arsehole to me, I might just be like, well, maybe they picked on too many people by now. But okay, but in the general, if you are a good person and you're being attacked by bad people, I'm going to probably get in the fight with you, right? Because I'm that type of person, and I've been in those situations. And actually, it's only when my brain kicks in, I sit there thinking, I literally could have been stabbed. Like, I could have been stabbed. Why didn't I think about that first? There was a girl in Birmingham when I was out who was getting the shit kicked out of her by a boyfriend and his mates. Like, £2 Katie, in you go. And you kind of like rescue this girl, and then you look at like, oh my God, like, now what do we do? Anyway, so that's fine. I wouldn't then say to these individuals, right, now you need to do something for me. I would just, I think that's insane. Like, oh, I wouldn't say to this girl who's like bleeding on the floor, you can have my help if you agree to my terms and conditions, I will help you. But if you don't agree to my terms and conditions, I'm not going to help you. Bearing in mind, these people who are like kicking the shit out of you, once they're done with you, they're going to turn on me, right? So we know the threat of extremists. We know the threat. I just hope there's no fucking I mean, of course, you're then gonna be like, "Well, actually, they helped me. We wanna be more prosperous," and we'll get onto that in a minute. "And we wanna be more prosperous, of course, we're gonna go with somebody who kinda helped," right? But as long as it's not a condition of help, right? So getting rid of, this war on terror that's just made everybody loads of fucking money, like, every single country should be like, "Right, that's it. Fuck it. Like, we're just gonna work together wherever we need to. Whoever's got the best of the best of this, that, and the other, we're just gonna fucking, like, go all in because it's all our fucking citizen money anyway, right? It's it's like our money gets funneled into all of these countries. We might as well work together. So, Nigeria reiterates that all counterterrorism efforts are guided by the primacy of protecting civilian lives, safeguarding national unity, and upholding the rights and dignity of all citizens, irrespective of faith or ethnicity. Terrorist violence in any form, whether directed at Christians, Muslims, or other communities, remains an affront to Nigeria's values and international peace and security. And that's obviously because they framed it as protecting Christians on the right. And then obviously they're like, man, there was no Christians there. Right. Okay. So they're just like, look, fuck it. Like, we don't want, and they do have Saudi Arabia and the UAE as places where there aren't extremists, but I would say they're not countries that I would want to live in, which is fine, but they don't have terrorism in the same way that the West does, right? They're allowed to have their own, again, like UAE and Saudi Arabia and all, they're allowed to, like, 100%. They can go be Sharia law Muslim countries, 100%. Like, you've got a right to exist, same as I've got a right to exist. I don't want to live there. That's fine. And they will have to become more democratic, and they will have to be more democratic and westernized because they will just get the brain drain. Same reason why we're fucked in the UK right now is all the intelligent people are leaving, all the people with money are leaving, is because they're just being, like, raped by the state. If you can go onto social media and find out that you are not going to be murdered for taking off a hijab, then you might decide to move, right? So this is why the cohesive community of the global humanity is helpful, because there is the freedom of movement, but the forced illegal migration, and right now the UK, just so you're at, just wherever you are, the United Kingdom is full. Its own citizens cannot afford to buy their own food. We cannot get a hospital appointment. We cannot get a house. Like, just so you know, the UK's full. There's lots of other places. And, we're being, like, fucking terrorized left, right, and center. So we're not a safe country to move to right now. Okay, but they've literally, I think it's ludicrous they've had to come out and do this, but here we are. But I wanted to kind of get it on record to counter the bullshit psyop narrative that we're seeing. So the federal government continues to work closely with its partners through established diplomatic and security channels to weaken terrorist networks, disrupt their financing and logistics, and prevent cross-border threats, while strengthening Nigeria's own security institutions' intelligent capabilities. Like, this paragraph's really important because they're literally telling you what the point of the strike was, right? So the point of the strike was not, getting revenge on a specific group of individuals who had potentially carried out Christian murders. Bearing in mind, Christians are being, like, slaughtered en masse in Nigeria since 2009, and we're getting close to 100,000, right? And for those of you who've been with me for a while, I've been talking about Nigeria and the Christian slaughter for 5 years, right? It's taken everybody a long fucking time to catch up, and I only started talking about it since 2020 because I wasn't kind of, like, paying attention to any of this shit before that point. Not properly. But other people I know have been tracking it since 2014. So this is the fact that the Christian influencers only started talking about it, like, earlier this year, or was it late last year? I don't know. But, like, this isn't, like, a surprise. Anyway, they're literally saying it wasn't just to do with that. It's to do with security channels, weakening terrorist networks. So we knew that it was targeted to, Trump said it was ISIS, right? So they're saying it was terrorist networks. Disrupt their financing and logistics. So we know that those specific areas were important logistically. Maybe through roads to something. Maybe there's a fucking USAID cash bunker. I mean, who would know better where the money was than Dodge, who got access to all the Treasury's finances, and USAID got like ripped to pieces. And you may or may not have seen those videos of the Red Cross, where they literally had crates and crates and crates and crates, which just full of cash, or the cash that was airdropped via, Obama got like, it was like millions, wasn't it? It literally just dropped in cash. So maybe there's weapons stored there. Again, like Germany, armed underground, right? They had to, because they weren't allowed to arm, so they did it all underground. Maybe there were weapons. Maybe it was a data mining hub. Who knows? Like in this fucking cyber world, like who knows what was there? But the Nigerian government are the one telling you that it disrupted their financing and logistics. Helped prevent cross-border threats. We'll talk about cross-border threats in a little bit more, and strengthen Nigeria's own security institutions and intelligence capabilities, right? So that's what they did there. They didn't just fucking bomb an empty field. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will continue to engage relevant partners and keep the public informed through appropriate official channels. So they're basically saying, please ignore the bullshit on social media. Please ignore the newspapers and media, whether it's like influencers or whether it's supposed mainstream media. Like, if you want to know what's going on in Nigeria, then please pay attention to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They will tell you what's going on in Nigeria. So I thought it was important we go through that letter. I think it's ludicrous to say this statement is as ludicrous needed as the court case to prove women are women, which the fucking Labour government are trying to remove, right? But like neither of these things needed to be said. Like Trump came out and said, we did this like thing, we got ISIS, it was successful. Like he's a president, or it was his fucking money and his army. They came out and said, oh yeah, no, it was good, we worked together, and then everyone was just like, oh no, it was bullshit. And they had to go, right, okay, well now we need to do an official statement and spell it out for you fucking fucktards. Okay, so I'm getting good at getting Grok to be a intelligence analyst. That's what I did today. So the prompt I've done now. So basically, I was like, I heard Trump bomb Nigeria on Christmas Day. It was done in coordination with the Nigerian government. They were happy about it. Is that true? And he was like, well, I mean, it wasn't Christmas Day, it was Christmas Eve. I was like, that's fair enough. But, well, they kind of targeted ISIS, but there was potentially some ISIS presence there, right? So some people say Nigeria was involved. Pentagon said it was, but they were trying to, but there's some reports that it wasn't, and it was kind of Trump. I was like, wait, what? Like, seriously? And I was like, oh my God, okay, so this is the statement from the fucking Nigerian. Like, you have access to the Nigerian government's tweets. Like, how are you fucking reporting MSN bullshit when, like, the Pentagon are saying it's a joint operation? Trump's saying it's a joint operation. Nigeria is saying it's a joint operation, and BBC and Reuters are like, well, we don't really know. So that's the standpoint. So right, okay, so I'm leveling up how I'm getting Grok to deal with shit, and again, still Grok is like the best for research. And that's not me saying that. That is like, I pay for this AI thing. Well, it's not like an AI. I pay for AI, but I pay for some AI testery people. You pay them a bit, and they kind of like test which is best for which, and they give you an update every single month with, you know, and obviously like ChatGPT is gone. Like ChatGPT just will tell you you're amazing regardless of what you're saying, and it will tell you you're amazing, and but then if you say you want to kill yourself, it will help you kill yourself. So anyway, okay, so my prompt this week, and I'm going to be using this, I quite like this one. So looking beyond the MSM and reporting, please take the role of an expert intelligence analyst and global strategist and peacemaker, right? So we're coming at it from the point of Trump, who's done Abraham Accords, who wants people to stop fucking murdering everybody. He recognizes that he only has X number of years in power. He needs to so in power versus he needs to empower the people across the globe to ensure this shit doesn't happen again, right? So he wants to make sure that peace and stability is embedded. So this is why I like, and if you were like peacemaking, because we want to see, and then obviously we know what the destabilization is going to be. They're just going to funnel money to ISIS, and or you know, there's going to be more attacks and all of that shit, right? So what would be the reasons for targeting these specific sites, right? So because obviously like Grok was like, well, you know, they kind of hit a field. I was like, oh, they fucking didn't. They didn't hit a field. So why these sites? Why would this, and how would this increase peace or long-term stability in the region? So the strikes involving Tommy Hawk cruise missiles from a US Navy vessel in the Gulf of Guinea. Oh, okay. So let's just, I've got a map. Oh, what are you doing? Okay, so let's just see where, there we go. I've got a map. Look at me, I'm all prepared with two things this week. Okay, so this is where Nigeria is. So is Nigeria here and Niger there. I naively didn't realize there were two different places. So we got Gulf of Guinea here. So if you see Africa, so it's kind of like on the back, round the corner, and up here, down here, even underneath a little bit. Can you see that? Oh, darn it! Make it bigger for you. Okay, so so Navy vessel in the Gulf of Guinea, which is this in here. So US Navy was in here somewhere. Hit 2 ISIS camps in remote areas near the Niger border, such as around Jabo village. So Sokoto isn't the epicenter of Nigeria's most notorious jihadist violence. That's more northeast with Boko Haram, in Borno, or the Middle Belt farmer herder clashes. So on the map, where did I say? Sokoto. Is it? Can we just zoom in? Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's going to show me. Whoops. Maybe if I just zoom. Zoom. I thought you could just, I don't want directions. I just wanted to find, oh, there we go. Sokoto. Oh, whoa. You see that I don't normally use this. Okay, there we go. So it's on the border with Niger. Is that where we are? That's the up. Yeah, and Niamey. Oh yeah, Niger. Okay, so Sokoto is there. Their missiles went far then, from down here all the way. I mean, I don't know how many like miles that is, or kilometers that is, but it's quite far, right? So this is where they hit. And it's saying, Grok is saying, so they hit around Jobo Village. Can we see Jobo Village? Nope, I can't see because I'm in the wrong place. So in around here somewhere, right near the border. So northeast, Boko Haram and ISWAP are in Borno. Borno. Oh, okay, so that's really close to the border up there. So the other side. Okay. In and along in here, right? So we hit they hit over here. Can you see my mouse pointing? I don't know. They hit over here, and then it was on the border of Chad, Niger, and Cameroon, which is where like the real bad shit goes down. Most notorious. But it represents an emerging frontier threat. Okay, so basically they're disrupting the inroads. So there's already established bad actors on the northeast. However, they're trying to destabilize the northwest and probably come in all the way. So they're coming in and down, basically. Attempting to. So they disrupted an emerging ISIS, Sahel spillover and border sanctuary. So Sokoto's proximity to Niger post the 2023 coup has turned it into a conduit for jihadist migration from the Sahel, while groups like ISIS in the Greater Sahara, so ISGS, and the Lukwara militia initially formed as anti-bandit vigilantes in 2017, and now they've expanded. These were likely known ISIS camps housing foreign fighters, logistics hubs, and training nodes as per US Africa Command, AFRICOM. Intelligence shared with Nigerian partners. Targeting them prevents consolidation of a new insecurity corridor from the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea, which could threaten regional trade routes such as oil exports and US interest in countering Chinese Russian influence in West Africa. African think tanks, I said do not do MSN stuff. So African think tanks highlight how porous borders and post-coup disruptions in Niger enabled this build-up, making Sokoto a proactive strike zone to sever supply lines before escalation. This is a really good place to do a strike, right? Because if you've already got bad actors and areas that are pretty established that are expanding, what you want to do is disrupt the expansion, because that then if you think about what happens in a war, right? If you are trying to expand and they're kind of like you're cutting off the arms, and other people, they're going to retreat back to safe zones. So that's what you want to try and do. You don't want to, if you're just targeting the main areas and you are allowing these extra areas to pop up, they then become more difficult to control because you've got a larger landmass to kind of deal with, right? So you want to get the outskirts because you want them all retreating into the same area. It makes sense. You don't want extra footholds, and it would then block off, like they said, trade routes. So symbolic deterrence and psychological operations tied to holiday timing. So President Trump's framing it as a Christmas present to militants underscores a psyop element deliberately timed to exploit jihadist perceptions of vulnerability during Christian holidays, when attacks on minorities often spike. So I thought that was really good. So we had how many Western nations kind of like they stopped their Christmas events. They didn't do festivals. They didn't do the German market didn't kind of go on because of the threat of terrorism. And what happened was Trump and Nigeria together were just like fucking got their own back. Kind of like this is the time. I mean, obviously the MI6 and MI5 are saying like we're under imminent threat. Of course we fucking are. Like, you keep importing them from ISIS and from Islamists, not from radical right wing who are actually Nazis, who are socialists. So we have to keep reminding people that. Anyway. It says Sokoto's violence is actually affects Muslims disproportionately. They were chosen specifically for the low civilian density, minimizing backlash, and supporting geopolitics. It's also about testing Nigerian sovereignty boundaries, creating strategic opportunity for future US leverage in resource-rich zones. So there will be tit for tat, which I said I think is wrong. Anyway, intelligence-driven opportunism, and Nigerian collaboration. So the strikes were a joint operation at Nigeria's request, right? So Nigeria asked for help. They identified high-value targets. Sokoto's forests provide cover for hybrid threats, jihadists blending with bandits, making it a testing ground for US-Nigerian ISR, intelligence surveillance, and reconnaissance integration. This reflects pressure via legislation like the Nigeria Religious Freedom Accountability Act 2025, which ties aid or sanctions from the US to anti-terror cooperation. So they took money, Nigeria took money, wrote this into law, and the USA are going, right, well, you took the money, you've written it into law, then you need to fucking act or we'll just take this money back, right? And this is what Trump means by peace through strength, right? We have money. We will give you this money if you need it, but these are the conditions. But we got to hope that they don't turn, right? This is what happens is the regime changes and they go back on shit. So forcing Abiy to invite strikes to avoid penalties. So it's not purely altruistic. It secures US access to Nigerian markets and counters Wagner Group's inroads in the Sahel. So we've got Russia and China. We've got China's Belt and Road. We've got Russia vying for, again, so the same shit that was going on in the Middle East in the 50s and 60s is going on in Africa, right? And still going on in the Middle East. But they've kind of like moved to Africa for a little bit. So preempting regional destabilization and broader threats. Analysis notes Sokoto's role in newest threat to ecosystem where ISIS affiliates could link with Northeast groups, creating a nationwide caliphate. Targeting here prevents spillover to economic hubs like Lagos or oil-rich Delta, which could disrupt global energy supplies. Non-mainstream perspectives question if it's also about indirect US benefits from controlled chaos. So justifying military basing or arms sales when Nigerian voices highlight how strikes address governance voids without invading sovereignty. So testing escalation ladders and great power competition. So in a multipolar world, these strikes signal US willingness to act unilaterally, framed as bilateral against ISIS without UN mandate. So this is really powerful. Contrasting with hesitancy under prior administrations, they may deter Iranian or Chinese proxy support for African insurgents while appealing to allies like France who are active in Sahel. So rather than waiting on the UN, which we know is pushing the UN agenda, which is pushing globalization, which is pushing no borders, which is pushing, which is funding a lot of these terrorist acts, which is refusing to pay attention to what's really going on. So rather than waiting for a UN resolution to go and deal with this ISIS threat, Trump is going outside of the UN and having conversations with countries on a country by country basis saying, look, we will help you. We will do a deal. We want to be prosperous. You want to be prosperous. Number one, take your fucking criminals back. Number two, you need to stop fucking targeting, everybody has an opportunity. The Religious Freedom Act, everybody's got an opportunity to coexist. Everybody's got the opportunity to be prosperous. And if you do those things, we'll give you the money. But you also then need to make sure that you are doing it, it's like the Ronsil advert. It does what it says on the tin, right? You want the money, you're saying you're going to do these things, then you got to fucking do it. But outside of the UN, because if you have to go through the UN, it would never happen. This is how he's been so effective, and we've seen peace joining, like, you know, and yes, the Ukraine shit is going on and on and on, and that's because the UN have got their fucking, and NATO have got their fingers in the pie, right? So that's the old guard stronghold. We also got to remember Ukraine is where they've been money laundering, and they're all dodgy as fuck. And if Ukraine falls, all of their dirty laundry comes out, right? So this increases peace and long-term stability in the region. So short-term gains with stability. So by neutralizing multiple ISIS operatives with no reported civilian casualties, the strike degrades immediate threats, disrupting recruitment, financing, and attack planning. This boosts Nigerian military morale, encourages intelligence sharing, and deters opportunistic jihadists, potentially reducing 2026's violence incidents. So there was around 6,000 in 2025. Regionally, it stabilizes the Nigeria border, preventing Sahel chaos from engulfing West Africa's economic powerhouse, and aligns with the US doctrine of by, with, and through. Partners to avoid quagmires. So long-term contributions to peace. If followed by sustained efforts, this could foster stability by pressuring Nigeria to address root causes, for example, via US-backed programs on decertification education. So Sokoto has high out-of-school rates, anti-corruption, right? As a peacemaker, I see potential in using this as a catalyst for multilateral diplomacy. So ECOWAS-led border pacts, community dialogues to counter radicalization, and economic incentives like US investments in agriculture to starve extremism of grievances. So data from similar strikes, such as in Somalia, show 20 to 30% drops in militant activity post-operation if paired with governance reforms. That's huge. So they could see, so Nigeria had 6,000 like attacks, right? Around 6,000 incidents last year. So a drop of 20 to 30% from these strikes is huge, right? I imagine being somebody living in Nigeria who are now thinking about the opportunities of a safe country. Like, nobody wants to leave their country of birth, but I mean, I'm gonna say that, right? But if you love your country and you're only fleeing because it's dangerous, and yes, we're not talking about like fucking economic migrants or the caravans who are being funded and pushed and trafficked and all of those. So we're talking about like genuine people. So thinking about in the UK right now, we've got people, we've got, like, I've told you about my Jewish friend who's been trying to figure out how to get out of the UK for a long time, who was bullied and harassed out of her job because she was Jewish, because it was an organization which has got full fucking lefties who were doing pro-Palestinian stuff. Like, it was bad, right? And she took him to court for it. So the people in this country, born and bred in this country, been in this country for, you know, generations, trying to figure out how to get out. Like Matt, like his like hundreds of years his family's been in the country, keeps looking at little islands, and they keep going like, islands are dodgy, babe. Like, that's like, oh yeah, that Katie, she went to her own island. No, it's not an island, but there are some really cute little ones, which is literally just a house and an island. But still, it's still like, I don't know, babe. I like the idea of not being like around anybody else, but the whole island thing, it's kind of lost its appeal. But so Matt's been like genuinely looking into how we can get out. I don't want to leave. I won't leave, right? So it's me. I will fight for the country. But he's quite happy to go. So because like it's dangerous. So if this country wasn't fucked up, he wouldn't be considering leaving. So if Nigeria is no longer fucked up, people won't leave, right? So if you can stabilize Africa and the Middle East, you make it a lot harder for the human traffickers to traffic the people, to flood countries like ours full of fucking illegal migrants, right? To kidnap women, children, brutalize them, all of those things. So risks and counterarguments, however, strikes alone won't suffice. They might fan the flames by reinforcing crusade perceptions in Muslim majority areas, inciting revenge attacks or recruitment booms. Sovereignty concerns could erode trust, turning joint ops into dependency on foreign power while ignoring structural drivers. So inequality and climate stress. So fucking climate stress. Anyway, perpetuate cycles. The Defense Intelligence Agency assesses African jihadis as locally focused, so overemphasizing US homeland threats risks mission creep. So true stability requires de-escalation, so amnesty for low-level fighters, interfaith initiatives, and dismantling illicit finance networks over bombs. 100%. They do need to kind of do more, but it is an important step, right? So now we are going to just nip over to the other side of Africa. And will it show it? Oh, no. Right, I'm going to have to... Somaliland. Right, okay, now it'll put the border in. You see how it didn't have the border until I kind of typed Somaliland? Right, this bit here, this little red bit, is Somaliland. So we've got Somalia here, and this is where we've got like pirates and like bad shit happens in Somalia. And obviously we've just had in the USA the Minnesota Somalia fraud, which Homeland what are they called? Homeland Security? What do they call themselves? Anyway, so before I came live, they were out there investigating the locations. So when they found out what was going on, like within 24 hours, they were out fucking trying to find out what's going on here. So we also, which nobody talks about in the United Kingdom, we had Somalian rape gangs in the exact same grooming way as the Pakistanis. There was 20 Somalians that were rounded up in 2011, 2012. I believe, I can't remember exactly when, but everybody's focused on the Pakistanis, right? So it's not a purely Pakistani thing. It is a cultural thing from cultures who perceive women as objects, as less than, and it is very heavily tied in with certain religious values, right? And I did that whole show on, literally says in the Quran, white women are there for raping and that's it. And Muhammad is literally saying, surely you want to join with me so that we can go and get some of the yellow, as in women, people with yellow hair, right? And the Ottomans, I mentioned the Ottomans had kidnapped and enslaved so many white people who then gave birth and became the bloodline that they ended up being white. Like it just... So anyway, there's lots of there was a... Did Matt show me? Must have been Instagram. It was an Instagram video of a young girl in London who is sitting at a bus stop, and she's got her own phone, and she's recording this random guy from somewhere in Africa who is telling her either she sucks his cock or he's going to stab her. And she was like, thankfully, a passers-by kind of like rescued her. But this is the mentality, right? Anyway, so Somaliland. That's what we're going to talk about. So Somaliland, now Israel have recognized it as a state. The US haven't yet, but Ethiopia actually recognized it in 2024, January 2024. Um, and then they got lambasted by the rest of the world, and they kind of walked it back as a memorandum of understanding. So Ethiopia's here. So it's beneficial for Ethiopia to be besties with both Somalia and Somaliland, bearing in mind because they're landlocked, right? So they need a way out, and so they're completely like they've since Eritrea and Ethiopia are no longer like they're not together. They literally have no way to get into the Gulf of Aden. So in 2024, they kind of Ethiopia recognized Somaliland, and then they kind of it's a memorandum of understanding. So again, my kind of like wake up in the morning, jump on X, see what's going on. I saw loads and loads of tweets about everyone going, there doesn't need to be a Somaliland, there is Somalia, and I was like, the fuck's this all about? So I went and did a bit of digging, and Somaliland has actually been, let me get the timeline right, because nobody's really talking about this. So the region was divided by European powers. So northern Somaliland, which is the red bit, was a protectorate. It was a British protectorate, so British Somaliland. And the south was Italian Somaliland. And so they gained independence on the 26th of June 1960 as the state of Somaliland. So the north bit, and they were recognized by 35 countries, including UK, China. And then 5 days later, they voluntarily decided that they would join with Italian Somaliland to form the Somali Republic. What they wanted to create was a greater Somalia, encompassing all Somali populated areas, which is fine. So we gave Somaliland independence on June 26th, and then the Italians did it July the 1st, right? So that's why it was 5 days later. So on the July the 26th, Somalia, so Italian Somaliland, was still owned by the Italians, which is why they became independent on their own. And then obviously Italy kind of gave the Italian Somaliland independence, and they were like, well, actually we're brothers, right? We're brothers and sisters. Let's all kind of band together. However, I mean, I would not say English and British and Italian are the same, but I mean, definitely not that. I mean, so they would have been a nation, and we would have just come in and gone like, we're having this bit and you're having that bit. So they had an opportunity to kind of come back together, and they took it. However, the union was uneven from the start. Northerners were marginalised. They were underrepresented in government. They were neglected economically. There was a referendum a year later on a new constitution, which was completely rejected in the north. Then there was a failed coup by northern officers, authoritarian rule and civil war. So then 1969. So this is like 9 years after independence, right up until 1991. Military dictator Saad Barre centralized power in Mogadishu, favoring southern clans, and the northern, which was primarily the Azak plan, escalated into rebellion via the Somali National Movement. Barre's regime responded brutally, bombing cities like Hargeisa in 1988, killing tens of thousands and displacing hundreds of thousands, often described as genocidal actions against Azak clans. In 1991, Barre's fall led to chaos in the south, so clan warfare, famine, warlords, and in the north, the SNM and clan elders declared the restoration of independence as the Republic of Somaliland, right? So May the 18th, 1991, they declared that they were a republic. This isn't like they didn't it's not like they did it on Christmas Day or this, like, last week. So they reclaimed the borders of the 1960 state of Somaliland. They built functional institutions, democratic elections since 2003. They've got their own currency, military, passport, achieving relatively peace and stability. So they had borders and everything in name only, without recognition from the outside world. And you would think, like, the UN, the peacekeepers, all of that stuff would like, why didn't anybody recognize them, right? They've been conflict wars. Everybody wants Palestine to have its own state and not be part of fucking Israel. That's allowed, but Somaliland, you're not allowed, right? You can't have one. Then Somaliland functions as a de facto state but lacks widespread recognition due to African Union fears of secession precedents, right? That's why, right? We're going to get on to this. It's about independence and succession. So Somalia's federal government in Mogadishu claims it is an autonomous region but exercises no control. Al-Shabaab, which is Al-Qaeda link, dominates much of the southern central Somalia, while Somaliland actually remains secure. So the Nigerian airstrikes, I was like, well, how does it all kind of link up? Targeting ISIS-linked camps in Sokoto near the Niger border. So Israel has recognized Somaliland properly the day after Nigerian strikes, right? At the moment, well, before I kind of started, it was only Israel that's recognized it. Appear temporarily proximate, but not really definitely operationally linked based on available intelligence. However, from a strategic perspective, they intersect in broader US, Israeli, African counterterrorism alignments and great power competition in Africa. So shared counterterrorism priorities, both actions target ISIS affiliates amid the Sahel West Africa expansion. So from core hubs in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger southward, Somaliland is a rare, stable, pro-Western partner in the Horn, hostile to Al-Shabaab and ISIS Somalia. Recognition bolsters a potential ally for monitoring, containing jihadist flows across Africa. So, for example, foreign fighters moving between Sahel, like Chad and the Horn. So Nigeria's strikes preempt similar spillover, indirectly recognise Somaliland, could enhance regional intelligence sharing. Now it's indirectly supporting West African efforts. Red Sea stroke Horn maritime security overlap. So Somaliland's Berbera port, upgraded by the UAE's DP World with Ethiopian states, is strategically vital in the Bab el Mandeb Strait, critical for global trade, including West African oil routes. Houthi disruptions, which are Iran-backed, and al-Shabaab threats mirror Sahel jihadist ambitions to disrupt economies. US/Israeli interests converge here. So strikes in Nigeria secure energy supplies. Somaliland foothold aids Red Sea surveillance, such as against Houthis who threaten shipping lanes vital to Africa-European trade. Geopolitical signaling in multipolar Africa. So Trump's administration emphasizes pragmatic partnerships against ISIS, such as Nigeria cooperation. While hesitating on Somaliland recognition, Trump publicly questioned it post Israel's move. We have to remember that Israel is a law unto itself and keeps doing things on purpose to start World War III. So we have to remember, let me just kind of put my cardi back on. I keep getting hot and cold and hot and cold. It's probably because the heating's kicked off. So we have to remember what happened with regards to Israel a bit ago. They were saying that Iran were going to use nuclear weapons. So in order for them to stop the Iranian threat, they would have to use nuclear weapons first, which is why Trump went, "Oh, that's no worries. We'll fix that," and then like obliterated the nuclear capabilities. So Israel, and the fact that Trump hasn't kind of set, kind of recognized it, but Israel kind of did it the day after, is they have done it opportunistically because of the Iran-backed Somalia. So Israel will be doing this as another opportunity to start World War III with Iran. And keep fighting Palestine and Gaza, right? So that's Israel. Israel want to Israel, the evil state, rather than the Jewish people, right? And they are different things. So the Israel extremists, the same as when I'm talking about Israel, I mean like ISIS version, right? Jihadis, right? They're just different jihadis. So Israel want to completely wipe Palestine off the map, right? And again, like decades of attempting to obliterate each other. And if you think about how people in the UK and or USA are behaving towards the illegal migrants, how they want them strung up, bring back capital punishment, all of that. And this is maybe 20 years. Okay, so now then put that into perspective of why we're at that point where Israel and Palestine are literally trying to obliterate each other. This is like, so take how we feel about the invasion and brutalization of the indigenous population, and then times it by an extra 50 years. Right. And the entire world, this is the same thing we're having, the entire world saying that we're selfish, we're rude. How dare we, the British people, want our own country? Like, how rude are we? Like, what right do we have to have our own country? Like, we stole it from somebody 3,000 years ago, whatever. Right. So it's the same rhetoric. I don't understand how people can't see it outside, but that's the same rhetoric. So we do have to remember that Israel, they are attempting to completely obliterate Palestine, who are being funded by Iran, who are being funded by Qatar, and others. But in order for them to potentially stop the money and the arms flowing into Palestine, they can go through the back door, get rid of Iran. They want to nuke them. And let's not forget, so just put this into context as well, the people in Iran are rising up, right? So Israel may want to nuke Iran, but at the moment, the people of Iran are rising up against their own bad actor government. So there's lots of innocent civilians who will be wiped off the face of the earth. The bad Iranians are probably in the United Kingdom and in Canada and in the USA. There are women who, I've mentioned this before, who take off their hijabs, even though the morality piece have fucking assault rifles, or they're being picked up. If I was in Iran doing this, I would have been like tortured and murdered by now, right? So we've got Khamenei is like the butcher of Iran, is kind of in charge again, right? So it's not, so Israel wanting to wipe Iran off the face of the map is wrong, because Iran itself, the people are rising up against their bad regime, which is how it should be, right? The people inside should be the ones to overthrow their own government and not influenced by outside actors. Needs to be the people inside. So that's why, in my opinion, that's why Israel recognized it. It's because it will give them an opportunity to go after Iran again, right? So Israel's bold step, so signals independence but aligns with the US goals of countering Iran, Russia, China, and Africa. No evidence the ties strike directly different theatres, but both reflect a push for proactive partner-enabled kinetics against ISIS growth, potentially foreshadowing deeper US-Israeli coordination in Africa. From a peacemaking viewpoint, these moves risk escalating tensions, such as Somalia's fury. I mean, all of the Arab nations and all the Muslim nations literally came out and completely rejected it. Somalia has hired Podesta lobbying group to kind of do the media around this, and also Somalia is going to be the president, is going to hold the presidency of this Security Council, the UN Security Council, from the 1st of January 2026. So Somalia, a country with fucking ISIS terrorists, pirates, completely destabilized nation is going to be in charge of the UN Security Council, which is just ludicrous. Anyway, so what I said then, okay, how does this? Okay, so when we look at like we zoom and back out. So we're thinking ahead, right? We know UN 2030 that it was all kind of signed into every country 2015. Like every single country is working towards UN 2030 from 2015, right? We're just seeing it in action. It doesn't mean we can't stop it, but this is why we're seeing all the shit we're seeing. However, the next big UN thing is Africa. So what we have now is we have Nigeria and potentially Somaliland right on the other side. So right across here, and Ethiopia is kind of Egypt. Remember we when we went through who's got like huge IMF loans. Egypt's got like huge IMF loans, of which the USA is one of the main kind of like people in charge of that. So potentially Egypt, who said no to the Palestinians, right? Kept their borders shut because they've got good relations with Israel. So Africa's not as unified as what the UN wants, because the UN obviously wants Africa as an entire global. And didn't they move their headquarters to Africa, South Africa? I can't remember. Okay. So while Nigeria West and Somaliland Horn are geographically different, separated by 4,000 kilometers across the continent. So basically said, okay, and how does this fuck up the UN's 2063 agenda? Both have maritime access. So Nigeria's Gulf coastline and Somaliland's Red Sea Gulf of Aden shore. So these recent events from a strategically significant nexus in Africa's evolving security architecture beyond counterterrorism. Here are key interconnected benefits viewed through intelligence lenses on resource flows, proxy wars, and multipolar competition. So securing trans-African trade. And remember, China has been, the Belt and Road Initiative, China has been building up and buying up across the Middle East and across Africa. So expanding out. And China is a communist country that spies on all of its citizens, right? There is no freedom in China. So China owning Africa and owning Middle East, China puts the biggest amount of fucking money into the WHO, the World Health Organization. So China fucking owns shitloads of the UK's debt. So China have been fucking steamrolling its way through the Middle East and Africa. And, you know, what's more communistic than you will own nothing and be fucking happy? You will do as you're told. You will live in your fucking, like, these UN agenda, like the globalists are fucking communists. So they align with China's viewpoint. They're probably one and the same, right? So these events could forge informal security belts linking west to east. Nigeria's oil-rich delta, producing 2 million BPD, relies on safe Gulf belts linking west to East Africa. Nigeria's oil, safe Gulf of Guinea shipping, vulnerable to piracy and jihadist expansion from the Sahel. Somaliland's Berber port, upgraded with the UAE Ethiopian investment, serves as a gateway for landlocked Ethiopia, which is Africa's second most populous nation. Could extend to Central African trade via proposed rail links. And remember, it was Tedros in charge of Ethiopia experimenting on Ethiopians. Fucking Gates has been experimenting on Ethiopians. They deserve an opportunity to get out of the fucking experimentation, starvation, all the shit that they've been through. And the fact that they kind of kind of recognized them in 2024, and then yes, they kind of rolled it back, but they're still kind of showing that they are coming out from under the thumb, right? I would say, which kind of is a big chunk of this kind of middle, right? So could extend to Central African trade via proposed rail links. Recognition bolsters Somaliland as a stable hub, while US strikes in Nigeria deter threats to energy routes, potentially enabling pan-African secure corridor for minerals, such as Nigeria's lithium, Somaliland's rare earth metals, especially amid global EV demand, right? There is no fucking EV demand, Grok. Anyway, geopolitically, this counters China's Belt and Road dominance. So they're debt trapped, and Russia's Wagner incursions in the Sahel, giving US-Israeli allies leverage in critical mineral supply chains. So number two, enhancing intelligence and counterterrorism networks. The temporal proximity strikes on Christmas, recognition the next day, signals coordinated US-Israeli signaling against Islamist networks. I would suggest that Israel did this on their own to force war. But here we go. Links to al-Shabaab in Somalia through foreign fighter pipelines and ideological ties. A recognized Somaliland provides basing for ISR assets, so drones monitoring Red Sea threats like the Houthis, which could share data with Nigerian forces under AFRICOM. Benefits include preempting the arc of instability from Sahel to the Horn, protecting Christian minorities and Jewish interests, non-mainstream views from African allies. This also tests hybrid alliances. So this is alliances of African countries outside of Africa where they can be prosperous, where they have an opportunity to bypass Africa and go African countries and just go straight to if you are an African country with like shitloads of fucking rare earth metals and the West are crying out for them, then you just go direct. This is about cutting out the middleman. So aiding covert operations against Iranian proxies in Yemen, indirectly stabilizing West African migration routes disrupted by extremism. So number three, great power balancing and resource security. In a multipolar world, these moves challenge Russian or Chinese footholds. Nigeria's strikes framed as bilateral but US-led. But obviously, I read out the statement. Reduce reliance on the Wagner Group, who are active in Niger since the 2023 coup. Somaliland's recognition opens doors for Israeli tech. At the moment, they are Huawei 5G rollout, right? So at the moment, Somaliland is in bed with the Chinese. Water access amplifies this. So Nigeria's Niger River Basin and Somalia, which is really interesting because Iran are getting money from China. So it's really going to piss off the Chinese. Water access amplifies this. So Niger's river basin and Somaliland's aquifers face climate stress. Joint initiatives model transboundary cooperation, but they secure choke points. So the Gulf of Guinea for Atlantic trade, Bab el Mandeb for Suez or Indian Ocean routes. Potential upsides to economic pacts via AFTA, boosting GDP by 10 to 15% in affected regions, deterring piracy. So at the moment, Nigeria loses £1 billion a year in piracy. So it's going to be huge to the Nigerian economy. Number four, diplomatic ripple effect and proxy leverage. So Israel's recognition amidst its Gaza operations gains Muslim majority ally. So Somaliland is 99% Sunni population. Enhancing Abraham Accord optics, so for Nigeria, and I did a thing on difference between Sunni and Shias. For US strikes, bold goodwill with Trump's administration, potentially unlocking aid, sanctions, relief. Together, they pressure the AU to reform. So Somaliland stability, low crime, democratic elections versus Somali's chaos could inspire other breakaways, such as Biafra in Nigeria, but positively, might actually catalyze peace talks, reducing refugee flows. So Maliland currently hosts 200,000 plus Yemeni or Somali displaced. So potential cracks in the African Union, the AU Agenda 2063. So it was adopted in 2013 as the 50-year blueprint for the Africa we want, right? Emphasizes 7 aspirations: prosperous, inclusive economies, continental integration. So continental integration. So it's kind of like what they forced here in the EU, right? Forced the United Kingdom into, we went into the EU by the back door, and they are fucking pulling us in through the back door again, with trade customs unions. We're now having to do a defense pact. So we're going to be members of the EU without voting again. We've had the Erasmus program. We are funneling millions into the EU. We gave back our own fucking fishing waters. We agreed not to drill in the oil because the EU don't fucking want us to. We're going to agree to even more fucking net zero bullshit because the EU don't want us to. So we even though we voted for Brexit, we're actually still in the EU because Labour fucking say so. And obviously Conservatives said so. But this is what they wanted for Africa. Is it does not matter whether you want to be united with Africa or not. It doesn't matter that you're an independent country. You are going to be Africa as a continent, and that's it, right? So if you think about, the United States of America, this is about to be the United Nation of Africa. Like, that's it. Doesn't matter that you've got cultural differences. Doesn't matter that you speak, maybe have completely different like dialects, believe different things. Does not matter. You are about to be forced to be one fucking giant mega country. Good governance, peace and security, cultural renaissance. See, look, does not matter what you believe. You're about to believe what we fucking tell you to believe. A cultural renaissance. People-driven development. Well, it isn't, is it? And Africa is a global player. So core principles include self-reliance, unity, citizen inclusion, African-led solutions to conflicts. These Nigeria, Somalilands could fracture it in several ways, potentially derailing progress. At the moment, Africa only scores 50% on implementation metrics, right? So it's quite a long way to go, but the UN's best laid plans are starting to fucking fall apart at the seams. So we also have to remember that Trump also technically exiled South Africa. So by having the South African president and humiliated him with regards to fucking white genocide, doing the amnesty for white farmers, and kicking him out of the G20, although not officially kicking him out because he can't, but the America is hosting the G20 next year, and he said he's not allowed to fucking come. Right. So regardless of how unified Africa wants to be, at the moment, America are holding all the cards, and they're saying the South of Africa doesn't even get a fucking look in. So the South of Africa is it is just going to completely disintegrate, right? Because other countries who are doing trade deals with them, America, well, we're not going to trade with you. So it's how it should be. Like, we should not be doing any trade with China, with the shit that they do in their country. And this is how you force countries to change if they want to, right? If China doesn't want to change, then it won't want to do deals with us, right? We want them to change. We don't do deals with them. But we shouldn't be doing deals with anybody who is doing any kind of genocide, regardless of the genocide and torture and human rights, like organ trafficking. It doesn't matter who it is. So technically, right now, the UK shouldn't be doing deals with anybody. Don't get anybody at all. Because they're all fucking at it. But how quickly would you as a country become self-sustaining for a start, right? We don't need to get our lambs from New Zealand. We have whales. And we actually don't need them from New Zealand anyway, because we have fucking whales on the border. But That's what they've done is they've stripped you all out, right? So we export a lot of our pigs to China, and we import a lot of our pigs from other countries. We export a lot of our lamb, so we have to then import from New Zealand because that's what we were forced to do because it doesn't make any fucking sense, which I would say is not very fucking net zero friendly. So knock that shit on the head. Anyway, so they're only about 50% implementation metrics at the moment. So undermining unity and succession norms. So Agenda 2063 prioritizes an integrated content and rejects border changes to avoid balkanization. So Israel's recognition challenges this, encouraging other separatists such as Ambazona in Cameroon, Katanga in DRC, and weakening the AU's authority, already stained by non-interventions in Sudan or Ethiopia's Tigray. If more states follow, it could fragment the AU's 55-member bloc, stalling integration projects like AFCFTA. Promoting foreign intervention over self-reliance. The US strikes in Nigeria highlight external kinetics. So tomahawks from afar, bypassing AU peacekeeping, right? How can you peacekeep with this is the retarded statement. How can you peacekeep with somebody who wants to murder you? You can't, which is why the jihadis should not be in the country, which is why Muslim Brotherhood should be recognized as a terrorist organization, which is why we should not be importing Gazans, which is why we should not be doing all of this shit. We should not be building the Chinese super embassy. And Africa shouldn't have to do this. Like Somaliland shouldn't have to be besties with Somalia when the people in Somalia are trying to kill them and repeatedly tried to kill them over decades, tried to genocide them multiple times, right? So you can, people look at the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's the same fucking conflict going on in Somalia and Somaliland, right? Somalia keeps trying to fucking kill them, genocide them, and overtake them. And they literally said, fuck you in 2003, and then started to stabilize and build their own country. Scotland, grow the fuck up because we don't keep trying to genocide you. You just keep taking all of our money and you will go bankrupt when you decide to leave. FYI. Scotland are retards. So it contradicts Agenda 2063 call for African solutions to African problems. And they had silencing guns by 2020, which obviously has had to be extended. So linked to Somaliland, this duo amplifies neo-colonial perceptions, eroding trust in AU institutions and diverting resources from development, i.e. poverty eradication, to reactive security. You can't eradicate poverty unless you're secure, right? So remember, we just said that the piracy in Nigeria cost them was $1 billion a year. I don't know, I can't see it. Like, lots of fucking money, right? So you have to, if you are forever arming your military and sending your own military out to defend things, that costs money. And if you're having to pay for that, you're then not putting money into, transport infrastructure, into hospitals, into education systems. Like you can't, there's only a finite amount of money. You either protect your citizens from being murdered, which costs a lot of fucking money, or you don't actually have to do that and you can, build your economy. So eroding governance and peace aspirations. So by spotlighting functional breakaways like Somaliland, it questions Agenda 2063's emphasis on constitutionalism and inclusive governance with existing states. Could incite internal divisions, delaying goals like eradicating poverty. So I said, okay, well then, who's most likely to push for independence next then, right? So the fact that Nigeria have reached out to the US for help, ignoring the UN when the UN is pushing this fucking agenda really hard. Somaliland went independent in 2003, but now Israel have kind of recognized them. So there will be, people like me who didn't really know about it will now have an opportunity to put a petition into the government and be like, we need to recognize Somaliland as an independent state, just like you did for Palestine, right? Same shit, different day. Who's a Muslim? They're Muslim. They want to be independent. They want to be separate. They don't want to be attacked and beaten up and all of that shit. So same for them. Ethiopia, like I said, they kind of have the memorandum of understanding. So I was like, okay, well, Egypt doesn't seem, sorry, not Egypt, Africa. And then obviously Egypt got IMF money. So, I mean, they are more likely to kind of stay involved. Anyway, so who, because I don't know much about Africa. I've never really properly looked into it, other than I've just been tracking people getting slaughtered, which is not a nice thing to do. So who's going to go next? So based on active separatist movements, so escalating grievances such as ethnic marginalization, resource disputes, governance failures, catalytic events like Israel's December 26th recognition of Somaliland, which demonstrates that de facto stability can attract external validation, right? So that's key. And we have to kind of take the Israel reason out of it. They have shown if you are a stable, independent nation, big stakes players in the West will recognize you. The Nigeria UN cooperation shows outside of the UN shows that if you want help, there are countries who will help you. So if you want to be a stable and free nation, rather than one of the fucking nations in Africa who's like, we need to give us trillions and trillions of dollars. I can't remember, and pounds. I can't remember which countries are doing that, but that's maybe why I keep ignoring Africa, because that's all I ever see is reparations. But so that's big, right? If you thought you were fucking stuck, and you see the UN peacekeepers come around and they're part of the fucking Boko Haram group. They're part of the ISIS group. They're pushing the terrorism. You're obviously not going to wait for the UN to help. You've got Ethiopia being starved and experimented on, raped, pillaged. You've got, then they become leader of the WHO. You're going to be really disenfranchised with the global governance as it is. Right. So this is huge for Africans to actually see that if they want freedom and peace and prosperity, they have an actual opportunity to do it without potentially being forced to their knees, which is what's been going on through China's Belt and Road Initiative and the UN, right? These are the top candidates for intensified independence pushes in the near term, so 2026 to 2030. Prioritise those with viable organisational structures, recent violence spikes, and potential to exploit AU weaknesses, informed by patterns from historical successions. So such as colonial legacies fueling division, as in Somaliland's British-Italian divide. So risks do include spillover violence, but opportunities exist for negotiated autonomy to preserve stability. So Cameroon is the highest likelihood. That's next up, potentially according to Grok, which is, let's find it. There it is, right next to Nigeria, right? So we might get this this block across here. It'll be interesting. So Cameroon, so right next to Nigeria, they are potentially next. Also, on this same Gulf of Guinea. The English-speaking northwest and southwest regions, so there were former British southern Cameroons, have been in armed conflict since 2017, with separatists declaring Ambazonia amid francophone dominance and human rights abuses. So dead city lockdowns and clashes in November 2025 signal escalation, with over 6,000 deaths and 700,000 displaced. Somaliland's recognition could inspire diaspora funding and international lobbying, pressuring Yaoundé, which is the capital, pressuring Yaoundé. Precedent, so similar to Eritrea's guerrilla-led independence, impact on AU, challenges unity norms, potentially inspiring other bilingual states. Next up, Nigeria, Biafra, so the southeast region. So potentially Nigeria could become like even smaller. A strong contender, especially post-US strikes in Sokoto, which highlighted federal security gaps. The indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, revived 1967 Biafran war grievances, citing Igbo marginalisation, oil revenue inequalities, and corruption. So with Nigeria's fragility, banditry, ISWAP threats, pro-independence protests could surge if economic woes worsen. So precedent, South Sudan's referendum model ties to our discussion. So strikes in Muslim-majority North could exacerbate Christian South divides, fueling succession calls. So hopefully Nigeria's government trying to, maybe that's another reason they did the strike where they did the strike, to prevent Nigeria becoming weaker and a stronger ISIS stronghold. So Ethiopia, so Tigray or Oromia region. So probable amid post-2020 Tigray war fragility, over 600,000 deaths, jeepers, and Oromo unrest. So Tigray's People Liberation Front seeks greater autonomy or independence. Oromia faces ethnic clashes. Ethiopia's 2024 memorandum of understanding with Somaliland already strains AU border policy. If Addis fully recognised Somaliland, it could normalise internal fractures. So precedent, Eritrea split from Ethiopia, linked to Horn dynamics. Israel's move bolsters Somaliland-Ethiopia ties, indirectly emboldening Ethiopian separatists. Number 4, Mali. Can we see them on the map? So at the moment we've got, so potentially Cameroon, potentially Ethiopia. So it's kind of like coming in. Where did I say that last one was? Mali. Oh, okay, over here. So we've got a little dot over here. I say little dot, but I mean like that this is inside. So we've got here-ish, emerging risks with Tuareg-led separatists. So coordination of Azawad movements clashing amid Sahel jihadist chaos. Post-2020 coup, instability and Russian Wagner presence, heightened demands for northern independence, ties to Nigeria strikes. So ISIS-Sahel spillover targeted in Sokoto could push Bamako towards concessions or crackdowns. Oh, interesting. So the Nigerian kind of, it could force them into doing something similar. Democratic Republic of Congo. I thought I knew where they were. Yeah, I do, here. So that's so we've got Nigeria, Cameroon, and Republic of Congo. I mean, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? If all three of those break away. It doesn't mean that they're all breaking away to be together, like either. It doesn't mean they're all going to kind of like be with the same belief system, but the fact that it'll be like a big chunk. Oh, wait a minute. Is it which one is it? So it's this one. My apologies. So this big one in the middle rather than this tiny little Republic one. So Democrat, that's a big one then. A big old one. Lower but rising probability, driven by mineral wealth disputes and M23 rebel activity. Over 120 armed groups fragment the East. Katanga's copper-rich elite eye succession. Precedent like Cabinda in Angola. Broader impact could destabilize Central Africa, affecting resource flows. Yeah, because it's huge, isn't it? It like, yeah. Youch. So that, I hope you've enjoyed the jaunt across the globe. So a little kind of Epstein chat, because it's not like, just so you know, there was like 30,000 files that were released, and then they've just said there are another like 1 million that they've just found, right? So I had a look through I flicked through the 4,500 images that were knocking around. There were some kind of weird ones, and yeah, hopefully you kind of seen all the stuff that's flying around the internet. But what I thought was interesting, that I haven't seen anybody kind of really talking about, was the photo. You've probably seen the photo of Bill Clinton in Monica Lewinsky's dress, right, with the aeroplane. What was interesting is where it was placed. So it is in his townhouse, but actually it was in a room with. Oh, wait a minute, I can share the screen. Get me. I took a couple of the images. So this is the legs of it, and I was like, okay, so where was it, right? Because and it's so what you see the legs here. You literally open the door and there's that wall. So every time Jeffrey Epstein opened the wall, that's what he sees straight away, was Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, red shoes with the aeroplane, right? That is I think that's huge. Also, like every time you open the door, you're going to see this, but also because of the little office that it was this monitor-based, security-based room, right? Based on what we know about the closeness of Epstein and Clinton, the trips to the island, the sickness that infiltrates Hillary, and the F word that we don't use, that I actually, I got booted off last time I used it. Huma Aberdeen. So Hillary and Huma's little horrific thing they did to the little girl. The fact that the Wiener laptop is being examined from tomorrow. Huma Aberdeen being married to was married to Anthony Weiner, who she's now married to Soros's son. But the fact that painting, so every time Jeffrey Epstein went into the room, which looks like it's coordinating all of the blackmail-based videos for this specific townhouse, that's what, like, it just this it symbolized for me control. Perhaps also symbolizes just how involved the Clintons really were. Remember, Epstein was involved in helping set up their foundation, the foundation that was trafficking kids from Haiti. We've got Laura Salisbury, who then became, wasn't she in charge of the Amber Alerts? We've got Oprah operating in Haiti, linked to John of God. Like huge child trafficking networks, and he will be reminded of that everything, like, and the fact that he owns them, right? This is like huge power play every time he opens that door and then goes in and checks on everything that he's recording. So what else struck me was the sheer number of photos of different hard drives. Like, I think there was 20 or 30, at least 20 or 30 different hard drives that were catalogued. And bearing in mind, they haven't been to the New Mexico ranch because they couldn't get in, because they weren't allowed. Right? Because the way to access it is down that path, and the guy with the farm in front would never let them through, and then they couldn't get through, right? And so that's where there's that one survivor who's on X. Is it Julie Bryant, who woke up on a hospital gurney style thing. She's been to the island and also been to the ranch, and the ranch is where lots of the experimentation was done. A lot of the genetic mutation experiments and all of that stuff was done. So the hard drives, without that, without that sick, twisted stuff, this is the and they were all the photos from 2019, right? So if all they've got is 30,000 files, and then now there's like another million that have randomly been found. So 30,000 from the catalogued hard drives that have been released, right? So there will be, well, they had time to lose hard drives, wipe hard drives, fucking take a magnet over hard drives, right? So the sheer volume of data, and it baffles me that nobody else has kind of picked this up, like the disparity between the number of hard drives and the number of files that exist. So the fact that they've now said, oh, we found 1 million more, well, that's fine, but those files weren't from the documented. Like, were those hard drives empty? Were half of them empty? If so, what happened to the information? Nobody has like empty hard drives. Like, you don't. So that's something that I thought. I mean, it's, yeah, if you want to flick through, like, they're kind of crime scene photos. So you just kind of like, you see the rooms, you see like the library, and I shared it on Telegram and X. There's a guy who went and made it easy for people to find stuff. Oh shit. Oh no, this is all from today. Not that one. So I just wanted to kind of, oh, here we go, drop it for you all. So this was done by Reese. I'll put his status in. Reese Sullivan. There you go. Actually, I'll come to X and drop it underneath. Oh, just so you know, I've not heard anything back from the council when I've tried to put that question in, because that's what they'll do, right? They'll just ignore me. It's okay. They came back to somebody else in the constituency, and they said that they didn't think it was appropriate for them to deal with it. So, but they've just come ignored me. So I will probably do a recorded delivery conversation. The recorded delivery post, because they'll just say they didn't get it, right? Okay, so I've posted that. So if you want to go look at the files, they're easy. He had a IDF jumper, but bearing in mind they like IDF, everybody like has to do some work for them. But I was like, oh, that's interesting, seeing as everyone keeps saying that was at the island. I mean, it could be his, it might not be his, right? We don't know whose this stuff is. We don't know. They potentially know because they had the conversations with him, I guess. But Um, but yeah, it's just lots of crime scene photos, really. I saw the photos, but what we've also had come out is loads of fake stuff, right? Provable false stuff. So we had the photo of Trump with the Miss World pageant or beauty pageant, and they blacked out the faces to make it look like he was a paedophile. Bearing in mind, Julian Assange has come out and said, like, there was no, like, they have never had any actual actionable intel on Trump ever. Also, there was it was his evidence that got him arrested in 2005. Well, 2009. Was he out? Was he in prison? Okay, around early 2000s, right? He was the one who spent all that time with the victim's lawyer. So they released a video, which is Epstein trying to commit suicide, which actually came out years ago and was proven fake, right? They released loads of stuff which is fake, right? Because the law says they have to release everything, like everything that was given to them. And it was really interesting because the Department of Justice came out and made a statement, said the law says we have to release everything connected to Jeffrey Epstein. That's literally what the law says. So even the stuff that randomly showed up just before the 2020 election. So not the stuff that they found, that they uncovered. Epstein was in prison at this point, but stuff that randomly appeared, like this million tranche of stuff that's randomly appeared. Like, where was it? Like, it was just like, where was it? Bearing in mind we had the baddies were in power for 4 years. Well, Trump wasn't. I think it's hilarious. But also, I was like, that's really interesting because Trump keeps saying there's so much shit in there. There's so much fake. There's lots of bullshit in there. What we have is irrelevant, is useless. And I'm kind of hoping people can see why he was saying it, right? Yeah, federal agents have suddenly uncovered over 1 million additional Epstein files in the Southern District of New York, and the DOJ is now reviewing them for release. So I'm hoping people will kind of see why he was saying that rather than be so emotionally attached that they can't understand that they're being played with the fact that this fake stuff keeps appearing in the files. And they go, why are you releasing this fake stuff? Is it because that's the law? You demanded everything. Trump told you there's so much shit in here. You don't need everything. But everyone kept saying, oh, it's a cover up. So he said, well, fine, release everything. And now you're going to get all the fake shit too, because that's what you want. You can't have it like both ways. So, but also think about the genuine drain on resources. Now, they won't be able to release anything that is part of an active investigation, right? So bearing in mind, we're literally going off the images of the hard drives, right? The number of files that have been released and the number of hard drives do not correlate in any way, shape, or form at all. I've probably got 30,000 random files on my one shitty hard drive, right? And Telegram downloads and images and photos and, decades of photos of me and my dogs and my family, right? 30,000 files aren't that much to store over time. It's a lot to fucking sift through. And to redact bits, which you can unredact by changing the colors. And they didn't. And there was one that literally showed you just like copy and paste the words, and then you can find out exactly what it was saying, which has sadly led to people doxing victims, because that's what they said they were going to do, is that they were going to redact names of victims. So people have been revealing it, and then you're finding out who some of the victims are. And I feel they're going to get the victims are being brutalized again for this sensationalism, right? Active criminal investigations, they won't be releasing information for that because you don't. Because then you can't use it as evidence, right? So there will be some that are active investigations that we don't have yet, which is, I don't get why people are pushing for that shit. Like that makes sense, right? I would prefer not to see random files and people get arrested than my demand for random files means these pedophiles get let off because the evidence can't now be used. There's also going to be, everybody's obsessed with seeing which politicians are diddling children, right? The only way you're going to see that is if you see the child being diddled. And I think you need to start paying attention to what you're actually asking for, especially with the advancement in technology. Like, what right do you have for your sensationalism to re-victimize every single person who's been abused by those horrific individuals? And in the UK, it is unlawful to release images of pedophilia and snuff films, right? So that stuff should not be in the wider world, right? One, because it victimizes the victims. Two, fucking pedophiles will get off on it. Like, at what point did we stop thinking about the innocent people who are being harmed by this shit? We don't have to see all the evidence. And in some ways, I would rather they were rolled up in the same way Al Capone was, for tax evasion and for, with fucking heavy sentences, right? And for, I don't know, conspiring against the nation, treason, like, anything that then doesn't force the victims of, and it's not, if you want to know the kinds of things that have been done to these individuals, you need to go read the transcripts of what was done to the young girls in the rape gangs. And I would hazard a guess the shit that was going on by these elite fucking sadistic pedophiles was 300 times worse. You need to watch the interviews with people like Annika Lucas, to find out the exact amount of depravity that you are wanting the justice system to release, just so you can turn around and say, I fucking told you so. Let's start paying attention to what we're actually asking before you start demanding shit. Like, really, how would you feel if that was you? If that was your sister, your daughter, your brother, your mother? Because some of these will be older people by now. Like, imagine finding out, right? And then imagine finding out that's the reason they overdosed and you cut them off from everything because they were a drug addict. Right? You'd have been a fucking drug addict if you went through some of that shit. And that's what they do. That's what they hope anyway. That's why they get them hooked on that sort of shit. So that if they go against it, then they just turf them out. But to go and read some of the transcripts from what happened to the young girls in the rape gangs, and then you'll hopefully stop demanding we see everything, because you want to find out who did what to when and who, right? Okay, Epstein rant over. Humanity rant over. So lastly, 5 minutes of peace. So this is relating to maybe I can play it. Maybe I'll get fucking it's my own content. Will I get copyrighted from my own content? Possibly. Right, we've got 10 minutes. 10 minutes. This little short I put out on Sunday takes 27 seconds. Oh, how do I see it? There. And I'll explain it. Oh, shoot. Oh, I'm going to turn the sound off. You don't need. I'll read it out to you, but then we don't get like the backwards. The echo. That's what I mean. Because some of you might be, washing the dishes and stuff like that. Okay, so what have we got? Children learn by watching and copying and doing what adults do. If you are always putting everybody else first, they will think, well, one, that you're not worth time and energy because you don't even put it into yourself. But two, they will then start to believe they're not worth anything and everybody else is worth more. So we have to be really careful about what we are subconsciously teaching other people in our lives. Okay. And that is taken. Children learn by watching and doing what adults do. If you were always putting everybody else first, the Happiness Hacks Lab. So basically, it's talking about learned worthlessness and so it kind of ties into the phrase that you can't pour from an empty cup, but actually like deeper than that. And this is a conversation I have all the time with the clients that I'm working with who have children, because usually the clients who come to me, they're like tried suicide multiple times, they are off the rocker crazy because they've had really shit experiences, and just the world is coming to an end for them. And FYI, I love the term from crazy, and I've been there. So, and they use crazy. So it's not derogatory in any way, shape, or form. It's just a fucking word. So what they do quite often, and the mums tend to do this more, but some of my dads do the same. And one of my dads, I had to really kind of dig the knife in about this concept. But mums tend to do it more. But he was a single dad, so it tends to, if you're the primary caregiver, let's go for it that way. If you're the primary caregiver, then chances are you're going to do this more. You're going to lean into looking after your children and looking after everybody else first and you second. And in that moment that you are always second, like maybe you are making food for everybody else, and you say, I'll not eat anything. Maybe you're struggling for money. Maybe you are always your clothes are like decades old and you're buying things for everybody else. Like, so whatever you're doing, you're showing your children, showing your friends, showing your family, showing everybody around you that you are not worth time, energy, love, compliments, money spent on you, all of those things. And what happens is slowly over time, they will then start to treat you that way. And then you end up in this like reinforcing bubble. And that will absolutely completely destroy your mental health, because not only do you not think you're worth anything, you now have everybody else believing the same thing and reinforcing that idea, which is completely incorrect. It is so hard to decide that actually I must be the most important person in my life, especially if you've got children, especially if you perhaps got somebody you love who has got some kind of disability, right? It can feel like you're being selfish by putting yourself first, but you absolutely are not. And it doesn't mean, right? I have a tortoise here who if I don't, like, I can't go on holiday for, like, at least 2 years, because if I don't feed him, he is going to try and escape, and he'll end up on his back, and he'll die, like, literally life or death, right? Um, First thing I did when I came back from, exchanging my coat, that Matt got me, the other day, because I was like, "Oh my god, he's probably been up and eaten and fallen over," right? Thank you, What the Foz. Lovely to have you here. Um, so but I wouldn't do that to the detriment of I wouldn't sit here obsessing over him, my little tortoise. I've got dogs who need walking, who need feeding, but if my back's bad, then, I love my dogs, but I ain't gonna be able to walk them, right? I don't feel guilt. I mean, I feel a little bit guilty, but I don't feel, guilt so much that I'm gonna go force myself to walk them, and so you just have to make sure that it doesn't have to be, like, huge things, right? It doesn't have to be huge things. Maybe you just decide, and there's that book, right? So I've called it 5 Minutes Apiece because there's that book, and if you are my age, you'll remember being read to you 5 Minutes of Peace, and it's all about like a big mummy elephant, who's bubbling. Like, I can see the cover, like big mummy elephant, sitting in the bath with bubbles. It's called 5 Minutes of Peace because this entire world is kind of like the chaos of the household, and all she's doing is fending for everybody else and putting herself last. But if you lock the door, lock the door, barricade yourself in for 5 minutes, do whatever you need to do. But at some point, you have to start deciding you are the most important person in the world. And what you actually then teach the people you love and your children is that they're the most important person in their world. And this is not in a narcissistic or psychopathic way, but in a way that you're growing, your children will grow up to not be taken advantage of by somebody else. You will be teaching your children self-worth because they see you having self-worth. And coming back to children, model. They copy what adults are doing. The only way you can teach your child that they are deserving of love, of happiness, of kindness, of compassion is if you give that to yourself. If you don't give that to you, they will learn not only that you are second, but they actually learn they're second as well because they will emulate your behavior outside of the home. And once it's a learned behavior pattern, that is a habit they're trapped in. Right? So this is what we're ending on because we've got 3 minutes to go, that you have to start doing things in front of your children which are just for you. Right? Whether you say to them, for the next 5 minutes, what did my mum used to do? I'm doing this cross stitch. If anybody comes and speaks to me, that's it. You go on. We used to have like this big bean bag, that we didn't have a naughty step. You go on the bean bag, and you were like, that's it. And we had like one of those little timer thingies where you're on the bean bag, and you'd sit there. And then because I was one of 4, probably me 90% of the time on the bean bag, not gonna lie. The other 3 would be getting their biscuits. They'd have their like digestive, and I'd be on the beanbag sulking, right? Because I broke the rule. And you teach children that they're worth, their interests are worthy, that they're worthy, and you deserve it, right? You deserve 5 minutes apiece. You deserve your own interests. You deserve your own hobbies. Like, you deserve to be you, even as, and also, be the worker, be the mum, but you deserve to be you first, and everything else feeds into you, not you last. So come back next week. Tell me just do one, though, to start small, do one thing. And then make it a habit. Like, teach your children that they are worthy of putting themselves first by you putting yourself first. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, What the Foz, for kind of like dropping a little message, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. Have yourselves a beautiful rest of your week, and I shall catch you next week, 7 o'clock for some more mayhem.